The Silverado EV is not an all-new EV pickup, but for 2026, this lineup has gotten a pretty significant shakeup. No longer do we have the flagship RST there at the very top, but we still have the power. You'll just find that in the LT. We have some more batteries, we have a new trim, that's the Trail Boss, and a whole lot else that makes this maybe one of the most compelling EV trucks you'll find for 2026. While the sporty front end of the RST isn't going to be found anymore, and honestly I'll probably miss that a little bit, you'll still find the power over in the LT, but as far as the front end differences, this is going to be the one that stretches out the farthest. It has much more of an off-road design, especially when it comes to these tow hooks, and actually I think this is the closest that any Silverado EV has looked to a more traditional truck. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards that. This front bumper also gives you a little bit more ground clearance or a better approach angle, and we do test that out just a little bit later, but beyond that, the only biggest difference is going to be between something like this and the work truck, where instead of body color, we get a black front end, but you'll be able to get a work truck in a few more variants. There's a whole lot of variety to be found within these different trim levels, but so too in the pricing. On one hand, we have the starting price of $54,895 for a work truck with that standard battery. That's the smallest option available. We also have all the way up to an LT with the max battery at $91,295. And that is an enormous spread, although all of those a little less expensive than we had that RST in the last year. If you want to add more features to an LT, you can certainly do that. If you want to change batteries, you can do it in every single model, whether it's standard, extended, or max range. The only thing you can't do is get a Trail Boss with that smaller battery. And I don't think too many people are going to complain, but there is a ton of variety available. Another change we see is that there is no longer an air suspension available on the Silverado EV. It is a coil suspension for all of them, but here on the Trail Boss, paired with these 18-inch wheels and 35-inch tires with plenty of off-road traction, we actually get a 2-inch lift. So that's where the Trail Boss is really coming into its own, is having a little bit more ground clearance, and we do get to test that out today, so stay tuned for that. In terms of charging the exceptionally large batteries that we'll find under here, no matter which size you get, that still happens here on the driver rear, which is great if you're planning on using a supercharger. But one bummer is that we don't have the NACS connector here. It's still going to be a CCS port, but there is also no dual charging. We see a couple vehicles out there that have a charger on each side. I think it's a little bit simpler to have it on one. You can get up to 19.2 kilowatts of AC charging. Got to make sure your home is equipped for that. But you can also get up to 350 kilowatts of DC charging. But obviously you have to make sure you're at the right charger to do so. So all these things to be considered. You can also power your house from this system if you have the accompanying GM Energy products. But that's one that is either going to be sold as a package at your dealership or one you can probably go without. The truck's not large for no reason. There is a ton of space here on the inside, and I've been able to get pretty comfortable here in the driver's seat all day. We have the things we're looking for: four-way adjustable lumbar support, plenty of adjustment here. The only thing I think I'm missing is probably an adjustable thigh cushion, and I'd even do a manual one rather than an automatic. But if you were looking for an automatic or a powered control, that's for that steering wheel, which does have plenty of range of motion. And again, I've been able to get pretty comfortable here in the front seat. Since I have room here, does that mean I have room in the back? I suspect the answer is yes. And at no surprise to myself, there is a ton of room back here. I mean, I don't really know what to even do with this space because this seat is set for me, and I got enough room to go ahead and, I don't know, put a whole bag between me here and still have some extra room. So if you can't find enough room back here, I'm curious about what else it is you're trying to do, because I would go ahead and rent this out if I lived in New York. But the seat itself is pretty comfortable, and most importantly for me, I have lots of headroom. I'm 6 feet tall, I tend to sit pretty tall, and if I sit bolt upright, I'm still not in the ceiling. I'd have to do a little jump to do it, and as soon as I do get close to the top, I still have this enormous glass roof, which really does help open things up. There's still plenty of storage to be found. Not only is there a ton of room in the cab, but we still have our e-trunk and a very accessible and still usable bed, because we still have this multi-pro tailgate available. And depending on which model you can get a lot of power available to off-board as well. That's 120 and 240. You'll find that over here. These all came today with tonneau covers, and I would probably include one on my own. Although if you're mixing this with the midgate and you use that midgate often, it just might be something you want to keep in mind. You'll be able to open up the lower half, but I'd probably go ahead and keep that window in. That way you have sort of a sealed compartment, and that's probably going to be best for folks who live in a wet area like I do in the Pacific Northwest. Hopping inside, I apologize if it looks a little bit dirty. We have spent pretty much all day in this truck, but we really have been putting it through its paces. One of the things we've been using a lot of, though, is going to be this screen. And it's not going to be the navigation as much as it is going to be the cameras, because there is 17.7 inches of screen available here and a lot of different camera views that have been really, really helpful when you're doing off-roading, especially if you want to keep your nice truck, well, nice. Outside of the cameras, this is using the Google operating system. If you go to the home menu, you'll see that we have the Play Store up there in the top right. That's going to be nice and easy for folks who have a Google system already. It's not going to do Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, at least not at this point. But having Google Maps is one of the big things for me, and we do have that here. We can also project that over here onto the driver display. But if you don't want to look down for the driver display, don't worry. You also have a heads-up display available. Not on every model, but plenty of them will have it. And actually, that's one of the nice things here is that there's so much versatility on this interior. The general layout stays the same, but that means you get this upgraded screen or this large screen even in that work truck model. But as far as the different color layouts, you can go ahead and pick and choose. Here in this particular model, we do have sort of a light gray interior mixed in with black, so it's not just one color. And we also have some really nice accented stitching. Plus, what we've been appreciative of all day has been the ventilated seats, but you also get heated seats. And it's not just heated seat, it's seated seat and cushion or just your backrest. So for folks like me who maybe have a sore lower back, go ahead and turn that on without having to warm your bum. It may be warm out, but there's no doubt that having this enormous glass roof really does open things up. Although not like this truck is particularly small on the inside, but either way, you get to enjoy a little bit more of what you have going on around you. And if you are in the Trail Boss, this is the kind of vehicle you want to take on your adventures because wherever you're going, you get to take in a little bit more of it. Even if you get a Trail Boss, chances are you're going to spend most of your time out on the road, and that's what we've done quite a bit of today. And I have to tell you, this thing drives fantastically well for how heavy it is and the fact that there is no more air suspension available. This is coil springs and that's all. And this one has the lift, but it also has the better tires. And I guess by better tires, I mean more rubber. And we didn't get to spend a lot of time with the LT, though we did get to spend some there. And that wasn't necessarily as comfortable, so I'm a little bit torn. I think I'd prefer something like the LT with the smaller tire, but if you get the max range, which is also where you get the max power, that's where you're gonna go ahead and have to get that 22-inch wheel. But trust me, the max power is fantastic. On the LT with the Max Pack, I know there's a lot of these configurations to keep track of, you get 760 horsepower. That's basically what we had for the outgoing RST, so I guess that's sort of the RST replacement at the moment. And 0 to 60 there was able to do in 4.5 seconds pretty consistently, although maybe not the most ideal road conditions. What I had here in the Trail Boss a little bit earlier, which does have less power, which is maybe a bit interesting, was 4.7 seconds. And what I think is probably also going to be a little bit less than we get in the LT would be the stopping distance, 128 feet from 60 down to 0 miles an hour. But I'm guessing a lot of that has to do with the tire, an obvious combination with the weight. Out on the road, it doesn't feel like this is as heavy as it is until you start really getting into things. And out on the road like this, actually one of the strangest feelings is the fact that we have that four-wheel steering. That's very different than we get in the Sidewinder mode, which is what they call the crab walk mode from the GMC products. But it makes it so this feels so much more nimble than it actually is. But once you start really pushing that nimble, you'll start to feel that weight go along with it. But either way, it's been a smooth ride. That's both on-road and off-road, but again, I suspect on-road is where most people will keep this truck and where I think the equipment is really lending itself towards. Which one's right for you is going to come down to your specific use case, but what I think is cool is that there's a lot more variety to be found. Yes, there's a more off-road oriented version, but even if you don't plan on taking it off-road, it does seem, I guess, a little bit more conventional as far as the front-end design goes, but you can also do a lot with packaging. If you want an LT, but you want high performance, great, you have it. If you want a Trail Boss with lots of range, you can have that there. Although, I mentioned that you do end up dropping a little bit of power. It's down to 725 rather than 760. So it just doesn't seem like Chevy's willing to push this Trail Boss too much more. But again, I'm guessing a lot of that has to do with the tires. We haven't seen much in the way of competition over the last couple years of brand new EV trucks, so it is sort of the same crop that's stuck around. Things like the F-150 Lightning, the Rivian R1T. We do have the Sierra EV, that's going to be the cousin to this, and I guess the more distant cousin, the GMC Hummer pickup. There is a Tesla Cybertruck, but I'm not sure how much they're going to be shopping a Cybertruck versus other models. I think Cybertruck owners tend to stick to a Cybertruck, although that Hummer I think would probably be a close second on who's shopping for what. We do have some interesting trucks on the horizon, but those are not all electric. We've got the Ram Rev, which used to be the name of the Ram all-electric truck, but they've discontinued the all-electric version, and now they're just gonna make the Ram Charger, so Ram Charger is now Ram Rev. And we also have the Scout, which is gonna have an all-electric version, but they'll also have a plug-in hybrid variant. And those both seem like they'll be somewhere in the market of this vehicle. I expect the Rev to be a much more close competitor, but if you want more off-road capability, I'm mostly curious about that Scout. It seems like that's going with much more of a mechanical off-road approach versus a software off-road approach. The question is, how much better is it going to be, and how much do the customers end up caring about it? That one obviously is up to you, the customer. Out on the road for a long stretch though, with Super Cruise, this is going to be hard to beat, but this is the Trail Boss, so let's go ahead and put it on the trail. Now we're going to start this off-road with maybe more off-road than you would want to put your vehicle through, not just your current one, but certainly your brand new electric truck. But this is a truck that doesn't have all the hardware you might expect from an off-road vehicle, but it certainly has the software. This has plenty of power, 2 motors, enough ground clearance, and enough articulation to make sure that you can get through obstacles that, again, I wouldn't necessarily want to put my nearly $100,000 truck through. Certainly not one that's this heavy, but it handles it all really well. For example, this particular layout is one that's got lots of articulation, lots of dip, and that 2 inches of ground clearance really does make a difference. Plus, up front we have a little bit better approach angle than we do on a standard model, and I'm sure that's making a bit of a difference too, because I have seen a lot of these trucks get really, really close. And of course, Chevy's not trying to put us in something that we can't accomplish, but honestly, I've been impressed the whole way through. So some of those hardware that this doesn't have is going to be additional skid protection, a specifically off-road oriented suspension system. It also doesn't have things like locking differentials. But what it does have is a lot of software, dual motors, lots of power, sideways steering. We have the 4-wheel steer and the Sidewinder mode, which you're not going to use all the time, but in some situations, a vehicle this big, it's been really nice to help us get around some of these obstacles. But if you start putting more on the vehicle, not only are you going to run into more weight, more complexity, more cost, but you're also looking for things that can go wrong. I don't think most people buying this are trying to take this on the Rubicon Trail. I think they're doing a lot of dirt driving. They want to take the dirt bike somewhere. And this has been more capable than I would have expected, because the closest comparison I had was the Sierra AT4 EV, or the Sierra EV AT4. And we really didn't get to push that very far. But since there are so many shared components here, I would expect that vehicle to be able to do pretty much the exact same thing here. And if you wanted more capability, I think you're either looking at a totally different truck. That GMC Hummer EV pickup or SUV has tons of off-road capability, including the lockers, but you might just want to put more aggressive tires on here. Although I have to say that off-road here, these tires have been good enough, and on-road, I'm not sure I'd want to go any more aggressive for off-road driving if you do want to enjoy your drive to work. Now, if you're someone who wants to get out and enjoy the weekend, one of the things people are concerned about with EVs is that you can't get anywhere and you can't tow anything, but that really just isn't the case. What I've got behind me is hardly a fully loaded truck here. It's about a 5,000-pound trailer. If I get a number, I'll go ahead and throw it up there. But this is the toy. This is the thing you'll take out for your weekend trip. And this is probably the truck you want to do it. Here are a couple reasons why. Number one, this thing tows beautifully because of how much power it is. We're in the Trail Boss right now, which means we have about 765 horsepower, gobs of torque, just about the same number there. And trust me, you can hardly even feel the trailer behind me. And a lot of that has to do with the weight of the truck. So obviously we can't fully max these things out as much as you could maybe another loaded, built-up model specifically for that use case. But this has so much range. With this max battery pack, you're looking at nearly 500 miles of driving range. And when you're towing, you're obviously not going to get that much. Just like any other tow vehicle, you're gonna have a decreased driving range, but when your range starts out so big, that matters just so much less. It's scenarios like this where you're getting started and you're going uphill and you go, oh man, I need to make sure I have enough room. And in this, you really don't. Honestly, if I floored this, it would be a shocking number about how low it took me to get from 0 to 60 miles an hour. But for safety purposes, we just won't go ahead and do that today. But we can also do this with Super Cruise. That's right, you can Super Cruise and tow at the same time. And that means hands-free driving with a trailer. You're not going to want to use that in every scenario, and obviously if you're fully loaded, you want to be very cautious of what's going on around you. But while I haven't had a chance to try it on this vehicle today, I have done it before, and trust me, with something like this, in the right environment, which is just cruising out on the way to the lake or the cabin, it takes a lot of stress out of the situation. And it's one of those things where if this truck is a high-tech marvel on its own, why not have a high-tech function like hands-free towing? I mean, it's a crazy world that we're there where we can go, yep, you can do that. I don't know if we've yet reached the point where there's a Silverado EV for everyone, but this truck really does have some range. And I don't just mean the enormous driving range, I mean the range of customers it's going to be able to meet the needs of. The biggest question is probably going to be here in the Trail Boss. Is this off-roady enough? I mentioned when we were off-road that doesn't have any additional protection, but what I think a lot of people might forget is that these batteries already are insanely protected, much more than your average component under an internal combustion vehicle, because obviously we're going to keep those batteries safe. And yes, there are other ways to do off-roading. GM itself has the GMC Hummer EV pickup, and that has lockers and differentials that are designed for all of this, and an air suspension to get more ground clearance. But there's also companies like Rivian who do up to a quad motor, which is not quite a lock differential situation, but much more advanced, much more software driven than it is hardware driven. And I think this has found a really good balance between those, especially considering it's going to be able to go farther than either of those are, and how much space you have, and how much towing capability, how much versatility you have as far as the storage room. Need I go on? There's a lot of reasons to like this truck, and there are a lot of reasons that I like it. Which one I would get? Might be an LT with a standard range, but I have to pick through those feature sets because I don't think I need to spend $90,000 to $100,000, even though I wasn't able to spec one out quite to $100,000. This is still going to be less expensive than the RST was when it first came out, and that means more folks can consider it. The only downside is we're saying goodbye to that federal tax credit unless you watch this in probably the next couple days. I think right now it says there's 6 days left to make it happen, and goodness, I hope if you wanted one, you make that cut. But either way, even when that goes away, this is still going to be competitively priced to a lot of other pickups out there, considering how fast it is, considering how much space it is, and honestly, this is probably the pickup that I'd want for my daily driving. If there's something this is missing or another feature you find on another EV truck that this 100% has to have for the next generation, let me know down in the comment section below. If you haven't found us on our podcast, you can find that either here on YouTube or where you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until next time, we'll see you down the road.